Hey guys, and welcome to the Steel Toe Leadership Podcast. Today we are on with one of my really close friends and somebody I look up to, and we like to bounce a lot of businessy things and life things off of each other. So I'm just excited for the conversation today. It is Miss Jennifer Todd, and I will let her give a quick introduction before we dive deep into your origin story. So Jennifer, let us know about you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. And I'm excited, of course, always to spend any quality time I can with you. So this is always a good thing. My name is Jennifer Todd, and I am the president and founder of LMS General Contractors. We perform a full structure demolition as well as asbestos abatement, large scale, think hotels, motels, high schools. And I'm also the proud founder of A Greener Tomorrow, which is a nonprofit that is geared toward empowering women, minorities, and youth to join and stay in the trades.
Yeah,
So
and we
I got a
will,
long accomplishments. We can go
yeah,
there. I'm trying to keep it, a little humble today. Why not?
Yeah, it's going to be a packed
Maybe,
episode
maybe
today
not.
with all these questions. I got a lot of stuff to hit you up on. So, I always like to ask at the beginning of the episode, like, how are you really doing today and in life? Like, how are things with you?
That is a good question. Thank you for asking. How am I today? Today, I am I feel good. I feel good. I feel good. I feel optimistic. And I am just excited about everything that's going on. And I'm excited about what the universe is going to bring to me that I don't even know about yet. So
I like that.
I'm well.
Okay, so we're going to dive in. As anybody who's listened to the first few episodes will know, I'm big on the origin story. Like, call me a Marvel nerd. I don't know. I just love like that superhero, like origin story. How did you get to where you are? And so I would like to know, Jennifer, your origin story in your own words. Walk me through your personal and professional path and how you got there. And I'll just preface by saying I'm probably going to interrupt you and ask you questions. So consider yourself warned.
It's okay. My ADHD can handle all the things. And so how did I get started? I got started in construction by accident. I had just graduated Georgia State University with a degree in psychology, and I was selling clothes on eBay. So I was definitely ahead of my time, as with most things that come into my life. And I actually needed more of a stable income, something that was consistent. And I thought that I would be going to grad school, but I did awful in statistics. And so that was the end of the road for me. And as life would have it, I ended up running into a friend one night at a bar, and against my will, my girlfriend was like, "Let's go, let's go, let's go." And I was like, "Yeah, I don't feel like it. Let's just go have one glass of wine." I said, "Okay, great." And I ended up sitting next to an old associate of mine that I hadn't seen in years. And I told him, I said, "I just graduated college, trying to figure it out. I think I need a job." And so my mom said, "I need a job. I need to find a job." And he says, "Well, my friend has a construction company. You should go and work for him." And in my mind, I said, "Oh, that can't be that hard." And so I went to work for the friend, and my first job was a receptionist. So that's how I got started into the wonderful world of construction.
So tell me, and I'm going to back you up a little bit. Where did you grow up? And tell me a little bit about what growing up was like for you. And then we'll restart back where you left off with college, because that's a lot of character development right there.
Yeah, I am a Midwestern girl. I grew up in Chicago. So I grew up on the south side of Chicago, and I loved my upbringing because it was almost as if I lived in two worlds. Uh, Chicago traditionally has been very segregated, and so the neighborhood I grew up in was a middle class Black neighborhood where my grandparents, great grandparents had all lived in this house, and it was passed down generationally. Even so much as like my mother's friends, they grew up on this block and they're still friends today. Um, it was a very family oriented environment. The neighbors all knew each other. I grew up in that kind of environment. And I went to a magnet school that was predominantly white. It was 98% white. And so uh, that was really my early introduction into being different. Being at a magnet school was different because, you were considered a very smart kid. And then also being a Black kid at a magnet school that was predominantly white was different. Um, and so it was good. There were, some things happened, of course, but it was also good because it really gave me the exposure to other cultures and other people, and seeing early on the different ideas that people come up with based on their upbringing and culture and things like that, because Chicago still is very diverse. I mean, my best friend at the time was Michelle Fitzpatrick, and so she was Polish, and we would go to the different events and Polish events that her family had. And I had another friend, Craig, he was Irish, and we'd go do different things, during that time of year. And so it was great to see different people celebrating their own traditions, but still having that familiar background that I had, in my neighborhood as well.
So what were you into when you were growing up? Like sports? Were you into anything? Like, were you nerdy? Were you artistic? What was your vibe?
I was into everything. And I later learned that that's because I'm a manifesting generator. So I like to pick up things, get entrenched in it. And then once I've absorbed it, I can move on. And
Hmm.
that's kind of how I do with my life today. But back then, I was in Girl Scouts. I sold the most Girl Scout cookies, 300 boxes. I had a record. Um, I was in karate. I was in dance. I was in gymnastics. I took sign language classes to communicate with a good family friend because she was deaf. So I've always been curious about things, and whatever it was, I just wanted to know. In high school, I was the co-editor of the yearbook. I was on the newspaper committee. I was in cheerleading. I did cross country. So I would have an interest in things. And luckily, I had a family that was supportive in all of these crazy ideas that I would come up with and things that I wanted to do. Uh, and they've helped me along the way. One of the main things it did as a kid, my grandmother would put me in oratory contests. And so you'd read different poems, and I'd read things by Langston Hughes and Maya Angelou and things. I'm 9. I don't know what any of these things mean, but my grandmother would be like, you gotta say it with passion and evoke emotion. And those are some of the things that I take with me on stage now. I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't know what it means to be a phenomenal woman. I'm 9. So I don't, you do, but so I'm grateful that she planted the bug in me to be on stage, because it's definitely helped me when it comes to presence and leadership and being able to show up for myself and speak about things.
It's fascinating to me, like what we instill in younger generations that they carry forward with them. And, how a little thing like that, like it might not have felt big at the time, but it turned into something bigger. I think that that's awesome. Okay, so you're an a receptionist at a construction company, and then what happens?
What happens is that I began to see what people don't realize about being a receptionist and being at the front desk is that you are interacting with every single person in the organization. You
Hmm.
understand what each person's roles are, you understand what their duties, because you're giving them the documentation. And when I started, 16 something years ago, we weren't technology heavy, so everything was paperwork. And so I began to happen to look at the paperwork, understand why this person needed this, who was responsible for this, understanding what the roles were and how things played out. We worked at a demolition firm, and so understanding permits and planning and the very safety logs and things like that, understanding what a job book was and what the requirements were to put in there. And once I understood that, I wanted to know more of, like, well, okay, why is this person doing this, or why do we need to do it this way? And I began to do all of the bids and RFPs and reviewing them, and started putting the packages together to the point where all you need to do was sign it, because I had put everything together. And
Hmm.
I wanted to learn estimating. And so I went through all those things and learned about estimating, learned about project management. I have my project management certificate for memory, and I taught myself how to use RS Means and Exactimate, because I wanted to understand what it was that we were doing. And once I understood from an administrative perspective, then I talked to my boss about getting out in the field, because I wanted to know, like, what does that look like? Like, what we're doing in the office, how does that translate to outside of the field? So much in construction, we put the emphasis on the work, the project, what's going on, the ribbon cutting. But the reality is that it is the administrative, it is the office that holds everything down and keeps the ship tight. Because if you cannot fill out the paperwork, if you don't understand the addendums, if you don't have a good contract or estimation in place, you are not getting on the job site. And so we did a lot of federal work and still do a lot of federal work. And back then they wanted 6 binders that was 300 pages and they had to be in this order. They wanted, it had to be cut, 1/4 of this way. It was just, it was crazy what the requirements were. And so doing that, it helps you understand but respect the process more than just the glory of what the field gets. And so I have a special space in my heart for anybody who is doing administrative work or working in the office, because I understand that without them, we're not able to get on the project and do the work that we need to do.
Yeah, you're right. There is a lot of things happening in
They
the
make us look
office.
good.
Yeah, of course they do. There's no way to get the work without that support. And so I think that that's a really great point that you bring up. And so tell me more.
Then you
What
can't
happened?
get paid. That's the other thing. You cannot get paid unless the paperwork is correct and accurate. And so again, you are reliant on the admin to get on the job, to stay on the job with compliance, but also to get paid for the work that you're doing. It all comes through the office.
I agree. Yeah, you're totally right. So what's next in the origin story? What happens on the timeline next?
The timeline is that when I get to Los Angeles and I am seeking more opportunities, more challenges, more money, things that I think that I deserve, I start interviewing at the top creme de la creme construction companies. This is Los Angeles; they're everywhere, and I was kind of met with a bit of like pushback of like, you're too young and I don't think you're ready and you need more time and you should do this on a grander scale. And it's like, the work is the work. Like, if you can do it, then why would I start over? And after a couple of months of that, going through 6 or 7 companies, I was just frustrated with the process. And I was like, there has to be a better way. Just because I'm young, I'm a woman, I'm Black, these should not be obstacles here. You should see this as, hey, she's interested, she's young, she's had a lot of experience. What can we do with her? But that did not happen. So what happened was I received a phone call from an associate, and it said, hey, down here in Alabama. We need somebody to do the paperwork. Can you do it? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, just set up a company. And I'm like, what? Wait a minute. What do you mean just set up a company? He's like, just set up a company and call me back. And I'm like, okay, I'll set up a company. Like, of course, I know how to do that because with my prior employer, we got licensed in about like 20 states. So I understand, I know what I need to do, but it was just like, what? And so I called back like, okay. And he's like, okay, yeah, we got a couple people. You're going to hire them and they're going to do the paperwork here on site. And this was after a disaster, like it was a Category 4 disaster. They don't do it this way on site anymore. They have contractors, but back then that's how they did it. Everyone would just converge after the storm or after the natural disaster, and it was just, all hands on deck chaos. But that's how I started LMS. And so LMS was initially a consulting firm, and we did basically, and still do, natural disaster. We do disaster recovery work, administrative work, helping applicants, nonprofits, and smaller municipalities to restore their facilities post disaster. So that is a part of what we do today as well. But that's how LMS started. LMS 0.1, and then 2K started when I missed demolition.
What does LMS stand for?
Logic Management Services.
Got it. Okay, and then at some point you got your law degree.
When I started LMS and we started doing the disaster recovery work, and I was like, well, and that lasted for a couple months, probably about six months or so. And it was like, what's next? So I started looking for a job. And my husband was like, well, you have a company, so why would you be looking for a job? Why don't you look for a project to do? And I was like, well, I don't know, what will I do? Like, I don't know what that looks like. And so he was like, just do what you have already been doing. And so I started making some calls and things like that. And we got another consulting job. And when I made the decision and said, I want to get back into demolition, I miss the action, I miss the progress, I miss things starting and ending, and I know how to do it, and I know the right people who can do it. So I was just like, I'm a Black woman. I'm still young, and I don't have any generational wealth going on here from lineage perspective of, this is not a construction business that has been passed down. I
Mm-hmm.
understand what's required. I got to take my behind to law school. And so I had gone to law school before while I was working for another company. And I just couldn't keep up. There was just the demand of work was just too much. But once I started my own business, then that was a different why, because this was for me. In order to protect myself, in order to ensure that I had the legal counsel that I needed, to ensure that I was safe on a job site, that I would get paid, I wouldn't get ran over. The reality is that every business should have legal counsel. You need someone looking at your contracts. You need someone who understands construction law because it moves so fast and it's very litigious. So I enrolled in law school and I went to Arizona State while I started the first year of the business. And I did my program online, and it was great because they had just started that. That was a new thing, having an online program. I found the program that was best for me, focusing on contracts, focusing on corporate organizations, because that's primarily what I was dealing with. And it all worked out. I graduated with a 3.8 and got it done.
I love that about you. So what I keep hearing is like this thread of curiosity and like being curious about something, and instead of just continuing to be curious about it, going for it and just pursuing it and dissecting it and then making it happen, which I think is awesome. And I also think it's a common thread in a lot of people that have found success, or at least fulfilled their passions within, especially within construction, is and women, is maintaining that curiosity about, well, how much can I do and why can't I do this and how do I make it happen? So I love that about you. And I love that part of your story. So tell me where you're at, what you're at right now as far as your journey goes.
Where I'm at today is I'm starting over all over again, because A Greener Tomorrow, my nonprofit, we are doing a 5-part docuseries highlighting women in construction and skilled trades and manufacturing. And a part of that is in part of curiosity, but the other part is the lack that I've seen being in this industry for 15 plus years. It's exhausting to not see yourself. And so, as a woman, and as a Black woman, and as a late millennial, it is very difficult to expect people to understand who you are if they don't see who you are. It's difficult to say that we've got to cure the labor shortage and we need more youth if they don't see young people, or they don't see other people who look like them, whether it's a minority or whether it's a girl or veteran or whomever. People need to see themselves in the spaces and the places in order to like have that aha moment of, wait a minute, this person I can identify with, and they're doing something that I didn't even think that I could do. I didn't even know if it was on my radar. And so that's what I'm really most excited about, is really showing up in a different way, in presenting, hey, look at me, don't just call me, call them. These are other women who are doing things and living their normal lives, but they don't even realize how amazing and audacious that they are by going against the grain and being one of few and being that minority. In some cases, for women of color, being a double minority in these spaces and being successful. I mean, the women that we are featuring on the series have generated billions of dollars, not millions, billions of dollars, okay? Being themselves. And so I want women who are in non-traditional careers in construction and engineering and manufacturing to be like, hey, look, if you want to know the secret, if you want to know the hack to success, it is being yourself and
Mm-hmm.
leading from an authentic space. And the only courage you need is to be able to be yourself. That's the courage that you need. That's where the inner confidence comes from, to get out there. And if you want this job, if you want that title, whatever it is that you desire in life, it is on the other side of courage and confidence and being yourself.
Yeah, I could not have said it better. myself. That's great. I love that. You've touched on race a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about being a Black woman working in the construction industry. You know, I do a lot of work in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space, and I talk a lot about it. But I also feel like I don't fully understand what it's like to. Well, obviously, I don't understand what it's like to be a minority within construction or within any situation. And so I want to understand from your perspective, kind of has it been like being a Black woman working in the construction industry? Do you get frustrated with, of course, you get frustrated with certain situations, but do you get frustrated with people like only talking or approaching you at the beginning as just a Black woman in construction, you know, as opposed to a person in construction? So just explaining kind of what that experience has been like for you. And, you know, I just want to learn more and understand how I, as someone who works in that DEI space, like how can I better represent you and women like you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Does it get frustrating? Absolutely. And I think that people have this misnomer that the more quote unquote success or popularity or influence or whatever it is that you think that this person has, then that absolves all the racism and sexism. And it does not, does it? With every level, like they say, there is a new devil every level. So, where I have had cases when I first started off and being, we've had some crazy, crazy projects that we've been on where I have been called the N word to my face. I have been called a bitch to my face. I have been chased on the highway by full grown men who were shouting and yelling racial epithets at me. And I'm 25 years old in the car by myself in a town that I don't belong to simply because the color of our skin. We've had our equipment lines have been cut. We have had issues with contracts and not being paid. Working for Las Vegas Casino, and they said, "Hey, we ran out of paper." We have had all sorts of random different things that have been very vocal and upfront, where they clearly have used race, and we've had instances where we can only presume that race was a factor or sexism was a factor. Regardless of it, none of it feels good. And it's important to share these stories because people will try to rewrite history and say that was that racism stuff that was so long ago. Don't talk about that. And it's like, I am a millennial. I'm not talking about things that happened to my father or my grandfather. I'm talking about things that I personally experienced. I experienced, someone coming on a project yelling the N word and saying, "We don't want you on our site. We don't want you in our town," simply because we did a project and did the demo. Like, there is no other reason. I've had to sit down with employees and talk to them because we've worked in towns where we were told, if you come to this restaurant before 8 p.m., we will not serve you. And we looked around and we were the only Black customers. And you know what happened? They didn't serve us until after 8 p.m. Things like this still occur across the country. And so I think when we talk about race and it is uncomfortable, for me, I'm not here to convert anyone, or force you to believe, because all of our biases are stemmed from our experiences that are lived. And so I can't, force upon you what I've experienced it and force you to understand, because you don't recognize that. And that's okay. What's important is that if you don't identify with it, and if it hasn't happened to you, to take your blinders off and still be cognizant that it's still happening. There's still nooses on project sites. People, black qualified candidates, engineers are still not being hired, even though we have a labor shortage. We still have Black women that are targeted for their attitude, for their hair, for their, demeanor versus their qualifications and their talents and skill sets. Women overall, are talked about because of how they behave or how they respond, versus that should not be a part of what you're talking about when it comes to an employee review. We're not talking about Bill's attitude. If he comes in here with a bad attitude every day, we're not focused on that. So I think it's a matter of understanding that people are not hypersensitive to things. Do I think everyone's racist? No, I don't. I know that not to be true in my world. However, do I know that it exists? Absolutely. And is it hard? Yes, it is hard. There was a point in my career where I was being called all the time to talk about the Black thing or to talk about being a Black woman. And it's like, call me because I have a law license. Call me because I have an engineering degree, okay? And I was, if we're throwing in the Black thing, I was the youngest Black woman to get this license, a general engineering A license in the state of California. I took the test. We could talk about engineering. We can talk about other things outside of being a woman and outside of being, talking about race. So overall, I think that um, needs to improve when we talk about just women overall. Like, don't call women just to talk about women. Call them to talk about their trade. If they're a GC, talk about that. Surveying, what safety, being a vendor, whatever that looks like, they're qualified to talk about the scope of work just as they are to talk about their gender and their sex and, their race as well.
Thank you for that answer. Another kind of question that I don't even know the best way to phrase it because it's stuff that's happened to me as well is when you get that feedback or there's that undercurrent of you only got this job because you are insert, whatever here, because you're a woman or because you're Black or because of whatever. You only got this job because of that. How does that kind of feedback or undercurrent of gossip or whatever you want to call it, because there is that. But how does that make you feel, and kind of what are your thoughts?
It doesn't, at this point in my life and career, it doesn't make me feel like anything because I know that anything that I get, I deserve it. Okay. So you can call it luck and you can say I'm lucky, but look, I'm going after everything. And so no matter what I get, I always feel like I deserve more. So if you think I got this because I was Black or a woman, it's like, where's the rest of it? Because I need more of it because it's not enough. And so I used to feel some sort of guilt or shame, but not today. It's like, whatever, you get everything. Okay. Look, you cannot have it all. So if you're complaining to me about I only got it, it's like, no, I think that that's more of that other person's insecurity. And I don't allow that to be my story. So I don't, I've done away with that whole mentality of, the guilt or the shame or the questioning of my worthiness. If I show up in a space or if I feel as though I should be there, then I should be there and I deserve it because I'm qualified. It's not because I'm the token. It's because I have an input in whatever it is that I have to say. And it is just as valuable as the next person because it's all about perspectives. If we're sitting in a room and we are full of leaders or we are in a room to impact change, don't you want everyone to be there? Because there's always going to be something that you haven't experienced, that you don't know, and that you could benefit from. We can learn from everybody. So if I
Mm-hmm.
am in that space and in that place, and someone tells me that, God forbid if they say it to my face, but if that is how they feel, that is their insecurity, not mine. I'm not subscribing to that at all.
Yeah, when I get that kind of feedback, my response is usually like, okay, that's your opinion, but let's have a discussion about it. Like, let's have a debate and discuss these topics that you think I'm not qualified for. And, if I even want to give it that
Why?
much,
Why?
I know. Well, probably because I enjoy a good debate and more than anything.
I think too.
I know you do.
But I think that when we are debating, and I'll debate with you about this because I'm just like, why? Because you know what happens is it makes you feel bad. And then even if you are responding, it's almost as if you are questioning your own self to the fact that you have something to prove to them. And you don't have anything to prove to this person because most of the time they're a stranger anyway. And if you
Hmm.
were that good and you were that great and this was your job, you would have it already. Why don't you have it? Why didn't they just give it to you? Why is it open? Why is it open season?
And I
So,
totally, I
so it's
totally
like if it was yours, you have
agree, and I subscribe
it.
to that
So
same perspective. I totally agree with that. Enjoy, some of these people that I don't know if you want to call them haters or whatever you want to call them, like the people that are trying to call out the progress that I feel like I've been able to make or I've been able to create within the industry, like, and people who are kind of calling that out. I like to understand their perspective so that I can take that perspective and also create ways to approach it in the future, because the best way I see things moving forward is to get kind of some of these negative naysayers on board, because we need everybody to sort of start swimming in the same direction, or at least seeing that progress is progress, right? Because the whole industry needs to start accepting all these different people and lifestyles into the space, whether you want it or not. Our workforce problems are big enough that we don't have the luxury to not allow everybody into the space. So these people that are kind of pushing back on progress, I want to understand why, and then I want to give them a better perspective, or at least work to help other people with that perspective.
That's good. And I'm on board with that. But what I know to be true is that change is hard. And
Mm-hmm.
even if people don't understand why something has gone the way it's gone, or this is the way it is, that's all that they know. And people don't willingly change. We don't. Change is forced upon us. We don't wake up and say, I should do more of that. I'm going to start. No, it's you go to the doctor, you get the result, and they say, hey, look, you have to make these changes or XYZ is going to happen. And that is the push that you need. And
Mm-hmm.
so if we aren't seeing the change, I say to people, we haven't seen it because they haven't felt it enough. And at this point, if you don't want to change from a social perspective and a human perspective, then I'm just waiting for your pockets to start hurting. And so when the money starts deteriorating in the business and the profit margins begin to shrink, then you will be open to change. And then you'll be ready to come back to me and have this same conversation of what can we do to get more women, minorities, and youth in the construction industry. And I will be here to have that conversation. But as you know, you've got a sister. I'm sure you talked to her about some things that she should change, and she was not ready to change, and vice versa, because you have to be ready to change. And until that happens, we're going to continue to see the haters, and we're going to continue to see the people who are resistant because they haven't been hit in the pocket hard enough. Because if you don't care about your workplace culture, because that's what it comes down to, why
Right.
we see a labor shortage. It's about workplace culture. You can call it diversity or whatever, but it's about, are the people happy here? And if they're not happy here, they're going to go somewhere else to work, or they're going to go in another industry because you've made them miserable.
Yep.
So once you feel the decline of your labor shrinking and you have exhausted all the options that you know, then you will begin to seek out solutions for your problem. But the problem isn't big enough for some companies. And so that's why there is the resistance to change. They think that they can just keep mowing people over and doing the things that they're doing and that it's going to work out, but it isn't. And so to those who are getting ahead of the curve, yeah, kudos to them. But for those who are not, it's going to be hard, and it's going to. We know how change is when it's against our will. It's bad, And so you just got to wait for things to get bad enough and focus on the people who are open to the change.
Yeah, that's a nice interlude into my next question. So you and I obviously are both pretty active on LinkedIn, and there are a lot of companies and influencers and people and talking heads out there talking about, diversity, equity, and inclusion and changing the industry. But then their words don't necessarily line up with their actions. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that. And when we're looking at these large companies and these influencers, how do you actually positively contribute to a shift in that diversity piece? Because at this point, it's become a buzz phrase, and that just means people start to glaze over when we talk about it, and that's dangerous. So what do you think actionable items, like what can we actually do as an industry to shift and change?
Well, I don't think that there isn't one specific thing. The DEI word has become weaponized, as we know. We're seeing it with the Supreme Court. We're seeing it through different other nonprofits that have been geared to, like the Fearless Fund. They had issues where they were, giving out grants and funding to Black female businesses, and it was challenged in court. And so when we begin to see things like that, it's dangerous because, one, when we talk about the construction industry specifically, the DEI people, I have a lot of respect for what they do because they are working with their heart on their sleeve. At the same time, I don't respect the companies who don't allow the DEI people to have autonomy over the job. It's not an HR position. It is a different role, but it is also a C-suite position. So you should be compensated with the title and whatever remuneration you're supposed to have, because that is a key and critical role in a business if you've hired for it. And so if you don't allow the DEI people to do the job you hired them to do, or if you're micromanaging, or if they're giving you this information to say, these are the issues, this is how we can better implement them, this is how we can better support all of our employees, not just the brown, black ones, all of them, because it's a ripple effect. When you are trying to enact change and improve the workplace culture, it's not just to make one person feel good, it's to make everyone feel good. And what gets lost when we talk about DEI is that it's just focused on race. And it's like, no, it's focused on disability. It's about different economic status and social norms and all of that. There's so much encompassed in DEI. But if nothing else, just treat people like humans, treat people nicely. Maybe that won't just improve the DEI. Maybe that will in turn curtail some of the suicide rates that we have, because we're number 5 in the country when it comes to construction. So it's not just that women aren't happy or minorities aren't happy. The white men in this industry aren't happy either, because they don't have a safe space where they can actually communicate with their employers to let them know that they need a mental health day, that things are not okay on the job site, that the job site is full of hostility and chaos verbally. And so until we can create spaces that are safe for everyone on the project, we will continue to have these issues of DEI. Does it matter? And this and that. Yes, it matters, of course, because ultimately you want everyone to feel welcomed, and we need everyone to feel welcome. We have a labor shortage. 750,000 people plus. They're talking about millions within the next 3 to 5 years if we are able to solve this. And to me, it's very simple. If I treat a person nicely, if I respect them, if I treat them as a human, if I encourage them and support them, regardless of their race, sex, gender, sexual orientation, okay, well, maybe I can get somewhere. And it's very simple. But I think that we, collectively have made it harder when it comes to larger organizations touting their DEI. The more I hear that, the less I know that they're doing. Because if you aren't showing the DEI, it is through representation. If you don't have people in critical roles and leadership, I don't give a damn about what you're talking about with this DEI thing, because I know it doesn't exist. And not only that, we live in a society today. Well, I want these top NER 500 top list companies to understand your employees are talking. They are saying, they're saying this DEI thing, they just stripped the women's program. They're saying this DEI thing, all we do is go to the conference. We don't have anything in place. We've gone to them and they don't do this. They took the Hispanic organization away. The African American organization, no one can get promotions. And so you can say all these things and you can do these photo ops, but just know the streets are talking and they are telling the truth. And so if you are propping these pictures up and propping these statements up, just know if it doesn't align, your employees are in the DMs telling me and whoever else, this is not accurate. And the people who are actually doing the work are getting results. And results look like quality employees, quality top talent. They are able to work in different markets of the country and still have subcontractors because they're willing to work with all contractors, not just ones who look like them. And so eventually it's going to come down to a place where they cannot hide anymore. And we will just know who's real and who's being for real about this and who is actually not.
Yeah. No, I love it. You can stay up there. I love watching you up there. I just want to be like, yes, because I totally agree with all of that. And I love that you and I can discuss these things, because I love your passion for it. And I love how well you articulate it. The thing with DEI that I think is dangerous is we have all these, like you mentioned, white males, and obviously our industry is mostly white males. I get the feedback a lot that that we're trying to make the industry soft by allowing, a more diverse, population within it. Like, oh, we've got all these hard workers and we want to ruin the industry by letting all these Gen Zs and these people who have feelings and are whatever sensitive. And I personally, and I'd love to hear your input, that could not be farther from the truth. I think people within the construction industry, the common thread is we love and value hard work, and we love that thread of getting the job done and impacting, the communities that we live in. That's what I love about the industry. I'm not trying to change that. I'm trying to help more people feel welcome into that mindset and welcome into the space of, hey, look at how badass we are, and look at all the cool things that we're doing within our communities. And there's those are two different things. We're not trying to downplay hard work, and we're not trying to take away from hard work. We're trying to show people how rewarding that hard work can be, and that's kind of how I feel about it, and would love your input on it as well.
I think two things can be true.
Yeah.
Is construction hard work? Yes. Do we need to go about acting new generations differently and in a softer approach? Yeah, because these kids have more feelings than we did. We had feelings, but we just weren't allowed to say that we had feelings, okay? Because I was told I wasn't old enough to have an opinion. And as a result, you now have these children and younger people who are super tapped into who they are and what they want and how they feel. And that should be a barometer for corporations to say, I want people to work here if they want to work here, if it feels good to work here. And so it's not about the dollar amount. No one's retiring at your company. They're not staying 30 years for a koozie. It is not happening. And so we have to, as employers, have to change. We have to change. And that's okay, because that's what business is about. It's like business is about adaptability. We're changing all the time. When I started in construction 16 years ago, we weren't using, everything was not technology, documents. You couldn't submit a bid online. Now you can almost only submit a bid online. When I started out in this industry, there was no Zoom meeting. Now it's Zoom meeting is acceptable. And matter of fact, no one wants to see you in person. Let's just hurry up and have a Zoom and call it a day. But it's about adaptability. The profit margins were different. The materials and things that we were using are different. And so why should this be any different when it comes to the people aspect and component? Yes, we have to do more nurturing and talk differently to these children, but that's okay, because we should want that anyway. We should want to know that, hey, your mom just died. You need some time off. Okay, thank you. I don't want you to quit your job. I just want you to tell me your mom died and you need 2 weeks off to do a little bit of grieving, do some mourning, and then kind of get yourself back together before you go back to work. You're going through a divorce. Okay, your kid is having a play at 3. Okay, I don't need you quitting. I don't need you afraid to tell me these things. You lost your car, whatever the case. We have I've seen so many issues, especially with the women, with our apprenticeship program. We had women that were just ready to quit because they didn't feel comfortable, and they had worked environments where they couldn't say, hey, look, we have one car. I can only get here at 8. I can't get here at 7 because I have to drop the kids off at the school bus. So I can't get here to 8:15. I am not going to fire you. If you're a great worker and you can crank it out in those 7 hours instead of the 8 hours, take the hour. No, you're not going to get paid for that hour, but that's better than putting the job that you like because you're not offering the flexibility. Or we had another woman and she had...
You have to have those conversations and
issues
be able
with,
to be honest. I was just,
we put people in abuse and everything, counseling, because we want to keep the people.
Yeah. I always say, who needs who more? We need those employees more. The other thing that I've been thinking a lot about lately, my partner and I, we're both single parents. We don't live together right now. We both have our kids close to, he has his 100% of the time, and I have mine 93% of the time. And the flexibility factor of some of these jobs, right? Because, when you're looking at, I know we were talking about this before we started recording, but as a single parent, and that childcare piece of not being able to get to a job site at 7 a.m., it makes you feel less than right off the bat. And that's crazy because I work my ass off. I know he works his ass off. And if we're looking at our, households, US households, 24% of them are single parent households. And so that's also, an entire, area that nobody's really talking about. Like, how are we looking at these single parent households and making sure that they are able to do the job, and making sure that we are offering them flexibility as well. And obviously that's a soapbox that I could get up on and talk on for quite a while. It's important, like you said, to understand like what's going on in a person's personal life, and if you need flexibility for a good employee, like offer that flexibility and offer that opportunity to come to the table as your best self and know that you're secure in that job, and not have to worry that someone's going to let you go, because you have to do what you have to do to be a parent. So I think those are all really great points.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, when businesses have to understand that we are more than an employee, or we are more than just that one component of who we come to work. Yes, I'm an employer, but I'm more than that. I'm still, a bonus mom. I'm still a sister. I'm still a daughter. I'm still a wife. We all have multiple roles in our life. And so to create a little more happiness, we do need more flexibility with how we're able to show up at work, because it's not about the hours. It's not about the quantity of hours that you do. It's about the quality of work that you present when you get there. And if you have a person, whether it's a mom or a dad, that is a full-time parent, give them that room to say, hey, look, if this is a job that doesn't even require you to be here in person on the job site, that's even more reason to allow the flexibility. Even if it is, we have women who work for us that have done asbestos work, demo work, and like I said, they couldn't come in for an hour. Okay, so let's figure out what we can do in that hour until they get here. But it's important for us to have them here, because why not? They're adding enough value to this job site and to this project that their loss, these 5 hours a week that we're losing them, that is not hurting us. It's not killing the bottom line. It's adding the value to what we're able to do when the person is here.
I agree. I'm going to shift directions here a little bit, and I want to hear about A Greener Tomorrow. So that is a passion project that you've sort of kicked off in the last couple of years, and it's starting to gain some real traction. And I'm getting ahead of the curve here because I want to be one of the first out there talking about this really great project that you have, and I'd love for you to share what you're doing.
Well, we're doing a 5-part docuseries YouTube that comes out in July 2024. And each month we're highlighting and showing a different woman, just a day in her life, but also talking about her as a leader and the multiple roles that she has within her life. And you have seen the episode, so you can, without telling the details, you can tell me what you think about it. We can talk about it if you like and share a little bit about it. But because I think it's, when you have something in your brain and it's like, this is what it's going to look like. And then it's like, this is what it looks like. And so it comes out and I'm like, okay, great. So I'm very proud of it. I'm very excited about it.
I think that what you're doing is amazing. And I did watch your draft of your first episode. I'm excited. And the reason I'm excited, and you touched on this earlier, and I could not agree more, and this is why we started Crew Collaborative, is if we're going to have more people consider our industry, they need to be able to see examples of themselves doing the work, and see people that they can relate to and say, hey, I can do that type of work. And so considering the fact that 50% ish of the population is female, having these series where you really are showing that path, and presenting women who are doing the work already, and how they are being accepted into those companies, and how they're being accepted into these roles, and not just accepted, but celebrated and promoted and succeeding. When a young woman sees something like that, I think the impact is more than we could ever understand, right? Because as a young woman, seeing another woman, you might even not even register in your brain like, hey, this is somebody that's like me. It just becomes the norm for them, right? Instead of as a woman working in construction, it's a, oh, that's someone who looks like me. I can do this as well. That is just checked off, and they don't no longer have that in their mind that they can't do something. So the impact is huge.
Yeah, thank you so much for saying that. And I'm glad that it resonated with you because that is really the intent behind it. It was about normalizing the work that women do throughout this industry and how we support it and what that looks like to us. Dealing with imposter syndrome, dealing with being a mother, dealing with being a wife, or the first female in your role, or the first woman of color in that role. We have a woman, Diane Bank, and she's over West Side. And she basically changed the trajectory of her entire family by coming into the family business because the father didn't want her there because he didn't understand the value that she would bring because he hadn't seen any women being equipment dealers. And so they're going into their third, now fourth generation because she stepped up and said, I can do this. Like, yeah, I don't know what looks like me, but I still want to be part of the family business. I still want to be able to create an avenue and a pathway for myself. And what I love so much about her story is that her nieces were inspired to get into the business. Now their daughters, they want their daughters in the business as well. And so that one person can change the trajectory of your entire family lineage. That is power, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Just being able to see your mother working. What does that? What does that say? It's not about what we say to our kids. It's about what they see. What is that? What does Christina look like when she shows up and say, "Hey, my mom's pretty cool," and she goes to work, and she's able to show up in these different capacities, so that we have all these nice, cool things, and hey, we got food and we got a house and all of those things. And so it's important for girls to see it, but it's also important for young boys to see it so that they can support their mothers and they can support their wives and girlfriends as they become older and support the women in their workplace because they've seen the positive impacts and the respect that the women are able to garnish throughout their lifetime, just through their mothers.
Yeah, I love that. And so what's the future? What do you want to what else do you want to do with A Greener Tomorrow? You've got this series, and then what? What's next?
I've always got something cooking. So I've got my other project that I'm working on for Agreement Tomorrow already. We just got to get this thing out. But I'm excited to spend the rest of the year on breaking barriers, women at work. And we're going to do, in addition to the episodes each month, we're going to have live launches around the country. We're going to be able to participate in live webinars after the show. And so I'm really just excited to get the feedback of the women and men as well if they're interested, and to really just really, like I said, just really normalizing it, making it so that you see so much of this every day that it's not even like a woman. It's like, okay, yeah, another woman, great. And so I would love it if someone wants to sponsor the next season of it, because when I tell you, what I wasn't prepared for was the amount of time and vulnerability and access that these women allowed us into their homes and their jobs. And we ran all over John Deere's headquarters, not headquarters, but the factory in Dubuque. And they have just been so gracious in sharing their stories and giving us a part of their lives. I mean, we have like over 15 hours of footage of just all kinds of women talking about all the things, because yeah, there's a feature woman shown, but I thought it was important to also show other women who work there as colleagues or counterparts or employees of these women, to show how did they get into the industry? How did they get that job? We
Mm-hmm.
spoke to an amazing woman, Danielle. She's with John Deere. And she talked about, being from the inner city of Detroit, and she leads a team of people all over the world. So she's been able to travel to Dubai and Brazil and London and go all of these places because she has a team that is so diverse. And she's been with Deere for almost 20 years. And she says, I'm from the inner city. When would I ever think that, becoming a mechanical engineer would allow me that time to not only meet these super smart, brilliant people from all over the world, but also able to travel to these places and
Mhm.
see these places for myself. It's like, when is that going to happen? Like, my job is going to pay for me to go to Brazil? LMS has never paid for me to go to Brazil, and I'm in charge, and I feel, a little sad about that. So it's just in sharing those real stories that we hope to impact change, and not only for this generation of women who are there working every day to keep them inspired to stay in this industry, because retention is important, but also for the future generations who come on YouTube and they're like, hey, well, okay, look, this is pretty cool, and this is something that I may be interested in.
YouTube star. Add that to your resume.
Hey,
So
it's growing, it's growing, it's growing. I've got a whole production crew over here.
I love it. Okay, so before I hit you up with my last question, I wanted to talk a little bit about the fact that you're doing speaking engagements all over the country. And you've really stepped into that quite a bit over the last couple of years. And I wanted to, for anybody listening who wants to do that more, I want to hear kind of your journey and how you decided to push into that, because I know it was deliberate. You decided that hey, I want to do more speaking and I want to get out in front of people. And so talk to me a little bit about that, and if you have any advice for people that are looking to do more of that.
Yeah, my introduction into my speaking career per se, it was really by accident because of a friend of mine. She is in the Air Force, and she asked me to participate on she's actually also wrote a book too. She's an author as well. And she asked me to participate at a conference that she was having and just a webinar. And I was just like, who wants to hear from me? Like, she's like, are you kidding me? Like, all the stuff that you've done, like, you don't think it's pretty cool? And it's like, no. And that's kind of the unfortunate part sometimes about our lives, is that we're so busy living life that we don't really think that what we're doing is just amazing or audacious or different, because we're just, I'm just playing the hand that I was dealt and trying to make the best of it. And so, and part of that comes with, resiliency and things like that. But you're so locked into living your life, you don't really think that you have anything to share. But we all have something to share. And so that went really well. And so then just randomly, I started getting more invitations to speak, even though no one had heard me speak. A lot of that stemmed from LinkedIn. And so if someone is really looking to get out there with their message, you don't have to talk about the labor shortage or the love of women in construction. You can talk about whatever it is that sings to your heart, whether it's trench safety, whether it's PPE, whether it's workforce culture, whatever it is that you care about, because we all care about something. If you are looking to expand your palette into speaking, begin to post on LinkedIn. You don't even have to have a video if you're still like camera shy or don't feel like you have the right equipment. None of that really matters. It's about the message. And so
Mm-hmm.
when you continue to share your message and your beliefs, and when you continue to provide solutions to the world's problems or the industry's problems, people will call you. And if you are interested, there's so many things that you can do. Look at the conferences that you've attended and that you enjoy or would like to attend, and pitch yourself and tell them what you'd like to talk about, the session. Most of them have speaker applications that you can submit, and you just want to make sure that you are packaging it appropriately with headshots and bios and things like that. But it's really about building your community and building a space online specifically where you are attracting like-minded people that care about what you care about too, and who are willing to support you in that journey.
Mm-hmm. Has there been anything surprising for you as you've pursued doing more speaking?
There's always surprises. I think that the receptivity that I've received, that's always surprising to me. Most recently, I went to Groundbreaking Women in Construction. I spoke there and was the moderator for the closing keynote. And, the women were running up on me. They were like, hey, I got a problem. Hey, I got this. Hey, this is going on. I need to talk to you. But it was so funny because they didn't want to. They were all scared and squeamish, and I was just like, "What is going on? Like, this person has walked past me 4 times. What is is this? Something on my face? What's going on here?" And the girl's like, "I just didn't know what to say." And I'm like, "I'm not a celebrity. I just posted on LinkedIn. Like, come on, like, let's like, girl, what's your question? Like, come ask me whatever the question is, and let's talk about it."
Mm-hmm.
So I think for people who are just getting started, no one is too big. Everyone is accessible. And the more that you put yourself out there, the more you will attract the things that you want. I even did a session, with National Association of Women in Construction about attracting the leads, attracting the business that you want. A lot of the advice that we get when it comes to business is about go after it, call 300 people, do this, you got to be aggressive. You got to, like, I'm a woman. That does not work for me if I want to win the room and I want to garnish a person's attention. Going in like a bulldog in a china shop is not, they're going to be like, she's aggressive. She's a bit much. I want to be a lot in the best way, not in the worst way. And so I think by staying, for women specifically, staying true to who you are, and approaching things in an authentic fashion works. If you're a man and that works for you, or you're an extrovert or whatever, that's fine. But not feeling as though you have to be something other than yourself. You don't have to be this super high energy, super, that's not me. That's not my style. And I struggled with that at the beginning of like, I need to be like Tony Robbins. I need to get out there and be like, hey, smile and laugh. And no, it's not, that's not my vibe. Like I'm a little bit more chill. Like I'm excited to be here, but I don't want to be inauthentic to who I am, and I want you to hear what I'm saying and still respect what I'm saying, and it comes from a safe and real place, not like, yes, let's do it, all right, let's go. Like, that's just not me. Like, I'm all for it. Like, yeah, let's do it, let's go. But I'm not, super high energy or anything like that. That's just, I figured learning, the more that you speak, the more that you are able to talk like yourself and be yourself and be comfortable with how you're delivering the message. That's the way it's going to resonate. If it's really you talking
Goes
and
back to
saying
your
the
earlier
things.
point of being authentic and just showing up as yourself as opposed to trying to be something that you're not, which doesn't really seem to work for anybody. So I want to wrap with the question that I wrap with on all of these episodes. Obviously, we're talking, the whole point of my podcast is really talking about leadership and the path that we've taken to get there. And we've talked about some really poignant things that have created your platform, right? Who you are as a leader. And I wanted to know, was there a point in your career or your life, in your origin story, where you realized that people were listening to you, and kind of what was that like for you?
Yeah, well, one thing I'll say is thank you for allowing me to snack because I got to keep my glucose up so I can pay attention and my brain
Yeah.
doesn't go. So for anyone watching, that is why I'm eating M&Ms and drinking San Pellegrino, because I got to keep the glucose going so that I can have this conversation. Secondly, to answer your question, give me the question again. What's the question again?
Was there a point in your career or your life path where you realized that people were listening and that you were a
Mm.
leader, that you'd stepped into that leadership role?
Well, there were two defining moments for me when I knew that I was a leader. The first was when I did payroll and I had to sign that check on the front. That was the first introduction to being the leader. So having to cover payroll for a prevailing wage job, that was the first introduction to leadership. Oh my God, it's real. The
Yeah.
second introduction, that gets you every time. The second introduction to understanding that I was a leader and had a platform was on LinkedIn. And the first time that I wrote a post and it went viral, and I had like a mini meltdown because I was so overwhelmed with the response. I think this was like the first post that I did. And I think it got about a little over 100,000 views, about 400 comments. And I just cut the phone off because I was just like, I'm not logging back into there because it is scary. That's a lot of people. How am I going to respond to all those people? Like, I can't not respond to them. And so that was at that moment, I knew I was on to something and that I wasn't talking to myself and that there were
Mhm.
other people out here that I didn't know personally, but there were other people in this world who thought the same way that I did and cared about what I cared about too. They wanted to see more women in construction. They wanted to see programs where women can thrive within this industry. And I was like, you all want that too? Okay. Well, I can talk about this all day long if this is what we're talking about. And so just knowing uh, that I was seen and that I was heard and that it did resonate with people, that is when I knew from a platform standpoint that what I said mattered, that people cared, and that I had the ability to reach people, but also encourage and inspire them without even, seeing them in person. And that is a powerful thing that I don't take lightly.
Well, you're doing amazing things, and I'm so proud to call you my friend. I think we've been chatting and connected for like 4 years or something like that now, or going up on 4 years. And a lot has happened in those 4 years, and a lot has changed for both of us in those years. And it's crazy because the first time we actually met in person was at Con Expo. And before that was 3 years into our friendship. And that was crazy to me. And it was also kind of surprising, right, that we had never connected in person before. And I just remember thinking like you were exactly who you were. You were exactly the way that you presented yourself, but you were shorter than I thought you were. There was that. But it was such a
I
great,
know, I get that all the time.
but
And I am
I'm,
so
yeah.
thankful for reaching out because I what I love most about our relationship is that it's like the energy doesn't lie. Like you said, it's been years before we actually saw each other in person, but it was just like I'd seen you yesterday when I saw you. Like, oh my God, it's you! Like there you are, and you're short too. So there you go.
I am. I know. I get that a lot. That I'm not as tall as people think I am. Well, I love you so much. I appreciate you being on here. I can't wait for this to come out and for people to hear more about your message and what makes you so awesome. And I'm sure we're going to end up doing another episode because I didn't get to like 3 of the questions that I had. Um, Thank you so much for being on here.
Christina, I love you too, and I am so proud of you and all of your resiliency. And more than that, for saying the hard things that you do online. I love what you share all of the time. I love to see Jackie and Frankie all of the time. And, just not letting life uh, kick you down. There's so many things in life that happen to us that we could be downtrodden about. But I respect the way that you get back up and do it all over again, and that you lead in a different way, and that you say the things that people are too afraid to say, and in your own way. And the fact that you're a beautiful writer, that helps, because otherwise it's like, yikes, what did she say? But you say it so beautifully and eloquently that I think that you should just go ahead and get the newsletter going. Get the newsletter going. Get the subscription going for that. Of writing the things, or get out there and be a ghostwriter for these people, honey, because they need it. They need some help, with this. If you need someone, so I appreciate you for being you and all the things that you and I have discussed privately, and thank you for being there. I appreciate it.
Thanks. The feeling is mutual. And we will end it here. We'll see you guys on the next episode. Thanks for listening.